So if the fluid cannot conduct heat, the heat cannot go to the fluid. So even the convection heat transfer depends on the conduction in fluid, even for gas. Okay, so the conductivity, thermal conductivity of the fluid is very important in even convective heat transfer. Okay, so any question, comments, thoughts on this particular feature of heat transfer? That even convective heat transfer has to depend on conduction in the fluid phase. Okay. All right. So now let us look a little bit into the. This is another textbook. This textbook is by Middleman and Leonhard and Leonhard. So I think one of them is a professor at MIT, another is University of Houston. Yeah. John H. Leonhard Ford is Mechanical Engineering, University of Houston, and John H. Leonhard V is Mechanical Engineering, MIT. So possibly grandfather and grandson, possibly. Okay, so this is a very nice book. Only thing is that I like Incropera more than this book because it's just slightly more involved than what we want in this course. Little bit more mathematical than what I want. So that's why I prefer Incropera in compared to Leonhard. By the way, Leonhard is free for download. So it's not the free in the way you get it from Sci-Hub, but it's really free because they made it free. Okay. Now I opened this book because I want to show you the. Okay, this picture. I forgot about this picture. Oops. See this picture. Okay, so before we come to this picture, maybe I can tell you a little bit more. So in convection, now let us again go a little bit of convective heat transfer. So convective heat transfer requires the lump of fluid moving from one place to another. So for example, boundary layer. So there are, so in the boundary layer, what kind of velocities exist? So in this place, so basically it's a MCQ question. One, in boundary layer, only x velocity, only y velocity, both x and y, 4. None of the above. Which one will you take? So we are talking about the velocity in the boundary layer. Let me ask Achal Kumar.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Achal Kumar, in the boundary
Hello.
layer flow, x velocity
What?
exists. So is the
Are
question?
you not audible?
Huh?
You're not audible. Repeat again, like.
So audible because of this problem or because this the voice is cracking? Let me turn off my camera. Okay, am I audible now? So am I audible now to you?
Yeah. Now you are.
Okay. So is the question clear to everyone?
So
Achal.
repeat once more the last part. Hello,
Okay.
repeat once more the last part.
Okay. So the question is that in a boundary layer fluid flow, do you have only x velocity, only y velocity, both x and y velocity, none of the above? Of course, none of the above, no one should tick ever. So which one will you tick, Achal?
I guess both. Because
Both.
it's not stationary. Yeah, X and Y.
Okay. So I think there is some conversation. Okay. So in boundary layer, so both x and y velocity exists. Okay. So that you will just relook at your fluid flow and you will know that. So in boundary layer, both y velocity exists. That means fluid also flows in this direction. Although that's much smaller than x velocity. That means some lump of fluid takes heat from here.
Sir,
Huh.
sir, how is there an x velocity for the fluid at the boundary layer? There's only y velocity, otherwise it could have moved even in the x direction.
Yeah, so fluid is moving in the x direction. In boundary layer, fluid is moving in like this. So the velocity vector, if you draw, it looks like this. So a large x component and small y component. That's how this boundary layer flow occurs. Boundary layer is a two-dimensional flow. Okay, so your textbook is Fox McDonald, as I understand, right?
Sir, but like in the fluid, that our fluid flow course, we considered like when we have the boundary layer, means liquid vapor as a boundary layer, then the fluid, then the velocity is zero. Means we consider that the velocity of fluid as zero.
The velocity of fluid is zero only at the surface. The entire boundary layer is not zero, of course. So that's the very definition of boundary layer, that at the edge of boundary layer, velocity reaches the free stream velocity. So if I draw the velocity profile in the entire boundary layer, you get this kind of profile. Here you reach the free stream velocity. It's
Okay, sir,
gradual.
sir, you are assuming that that there is a flow in the river. There is some free stream velocity.
So this is basically flow over a flat plate. This is a
Okay.
flat plate, and flow is approaching this flat plate and developing a boundary layer. Initially, boundary layer is very thin. As you go, it grows. So I suggest you relook at this boundary layer flow thoroughly before the convection part starts, because this this heat transfer course depends heavily on your knowledge of boundary layer, especially other aspects of fluid mechanics as well. So as I understand, your textbook is Fox McDonald. Am I correct?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Okay. So just open the boundary layer heavy dynamic part from Fox McDonald and study that. You will learn that there is a y direction velocity in the boundary layer. And what I want to tell you or discuss here is that this y direction velocity is responsible for taking lump of fluid from here to here. And because it's hot here and it's cold here, so heat transfer occurs from surface to away. So that is the convective heat transfer. So convective heat transfer requires this movement, macroscopic movement in the idea of fluid dynamics, the y direction velocity or movement of fluid from one location to another. If fluid does not move in y direction, if y direction velocity is 0, in that case you will not have y direction convection. See, for example, if we are talking about a pipe flow, okay. So as you know, this pipe flow is one dimensional laminar, say laminar pipe flow, okay. Laminar pipe flow. So what is the velocity profile in laminar pipe flow? Parabolic velocity profile, all right. So parabolic velocity profile, and for a fully developed flow, you know that the velocity is a function of
Radial distance.
Function of r only, right? So it doesn't change with respect to z, and this like this. So, and also laminar flow, that means all the lamina of fluid, they are just sliding above each other. Okay, so you can imagine this like lamina are flying, sliding each other above each other. So in that case, in such a case, there is no movement of fluid in this direction. So velocity is in r direction, but there is the velocity is a function of r, but there is no r direction velocity. This is basically z direction velocity. There is no r direction velocity. For this kind of flow, even though it may be liquid or gas, the only mode that can take heat from wall to the bulk of fluid is conduction. Okay. So let me repeat this part also again. So pipe flow, fluid is in a parabolic, fully developed profile, velocity, laminar flow, and you should be aware that there is no r direction velocity in this flow. All velocities in z direction. This is one dimensional velocity equation. So there is no VR in laminar fully developed flow. So since there is no VR, there is no lump of fluid flowing from wall to the bulk of the fluid. So how the heat will transfer from wall to the fluid? If we have heated wall, we know that the fluid gets heated. So for that case, the only way fluid heat transfers from wall to the fluid is through conduction in this direction. Okay. So does that make sense? But if it's a turbulent flow, it's a completely different story, because in turbulent flow, there will be the fluctuating velocity in all three directions. So that's why for heat transfer, the turbulent flow is preferred. Okay. Let me see how you guys are doing. Katra, Kushal, Jagdish.
Yes, sir.
I think
Yes,
your first name is Jagdish and surname is Katra.
No, sir, my first name is Kushal and my surname is Katra. Jagdish is my
Kushal
father's
Katra.
name.
All right.
Yes, sir.
So what do you understand? So are you convinced that for laminar fully developed flow, even for a fluid, the heat transfers from wall to the bulk through conduction?
Yes, sir. Conduction. Yes, sir.
Okay, because there is no bulk flow in r direction. Okay. So the point that I am making here is that the importance of conduction even for liquids and gases, heat transfer to liquid and gases. So, and the strong relation between conduction and convection. Okay. There's just some rough ideas. So we'll go into details of those, or no, we'll go into details of convection, and those ideas will come back with much more details and much more thoroughness. But at the onset, I want you to get some idea. So that's why I discuss those things. So now I think you have a fair idea of conduction heat transfer and convection heat transfer. Radiation heat transfer is different. Radiation, as you know, that in my office now this sun's radiation is coming. So what is radiation? Let me hear from you. Nidhiraj, what is radiation?
Yes, sir. In radiation, we don't require any medium to transfer heat or transfer anything. It occurs due to radiation. We don't require any medium in between.
Okay, yes, very correct. But I'm looking for a little bit more on what is radiation. Let me see if Naman Jajani can tell me. Naman.
Sir, heat transfer in the form of photons or electromagnetic waves.
Okay, yeah. So that's important point, that electromagnetic wave. Can anyone tell me what is the wavelength or frequency range or wavelength range for electromagnetic waves, that known electromagnetic wave encountered by us? What is the shortest wave?
Sir, gamma rays is the shortest wave.
Okay.
Unknown.
The cosmic ray, gamma ray. So those are short wavelength radiations. And as you know that the cosmic rays are always passing through us. So not all electromagnetic waves hit a particular substance. So when electromagnetic waves falls on a body, not all are absorbed either. Cosmic rays pass us without getting absorbed. So a lot of electromagnetic waves pass the matter without getting absorbed. So a certain wavelength range is important for radiation heat transfer. Radiation is always there, so all sorts of radiations are there. But when we are talking about radiation heat transfer, we are looking for slightly from infrared to even the visible range also has certain degree of heating capacity, but mostly infrared to microwave. So those are the wavelength range we are looking for. That kind of electromagnetic wave, when falls on a surface, so part of it is absorbed by the surface. That wave is absorbed by the surface, and that absorbed energy, part of it may be reflected, part of it may be transmitted, like it's passing through the glass. Part of it transferred into heat. So that is what radiation heat transfer. Radiation may pass through various mediums, and whether it will pass, whether a medium is transparent to a radiation or not, that depends on the wavelength of radiation. So visible light passes through glass, but certain infrared will not pass. So it's not transparent to those wavelengths. So that is radiation heat transfer. So now we know that three modes. We have a fairly good discussion on conduction, convection, and radiation heat transfer. And now let us look at this picture. This very nicely tells us the difference between various modes of heat transfer. So the burn is on fire. So this is conduction. So you take a bucket of water, pass through, and it goes. This is how the conduction heat transfer occurs. So none of them move from their place. So all the solid molecules are in their lattice, but they are transferring the phonons. That's here is the bucket. 3 is the convective heat transfer, because a lump of fluid is taking heat from one place and running with the bulk flow to other place. So that is our convective heat transfer. And this is radiative heat transfer, because you don't need anyone to go there. You are just pumping the fluid from one place to another. So this is a brief discussion on 3 modes of heat transfer. Now, let me show you. This book has very nice pictures of all the who's who for heat transfer. This is Fourier's law. We'll see. Here, actually, I am looking for the thermal conductivity. Yes, here. Looking for this plot. So let us look at the thermal conductivity values of different materials. So this is compound evacuated insulations. There are some specialized material who has very low thermal conductivity. And then gases. These are gases. This is the range of thermal conductivity at 300 Kelvin. So thermal conductivity is a function of temperature. As temperature changes, thermal conductivity may increase, decrease depending on substance. Metals, mostly they decrease. For gases and other fluids, they increase because of the dependence of mean free path for gases. So here you see that 300 Kelvin, non-metallic gases has very low thermal conductivity. So you have to note that this is a log scale. Okay, this is a log scale. So these are order of magnitude difference. This is gases, and then non-metallic solids, non-metallic liquids are here, liquid metals are here, and solid metals. So as we expect, the metals have a very high thermal conductivity. But there are other substances, as someone pointed out, that carbon nanomaterials, diamond, they may have, depending on the structure, they may have, even there are some other crystals which may have thermal conductivities higher than metals. Yeah, here diamond is given here. This diamond is higher than metal, and silver is the metal which has highest thermal conductivity, and then copper. Iron is not that good, and various alloys, as you make alloy, the thermal conductivity actually drops substantially. And other alkali metals like sodium and oxides and other things are non-metallic solids, means these are oxides, these are non-metallic liquids. Okay, so this chart gives you a reasonable idea of thermal conductivities of various materials. I think a slightly better chart is available in Incropera. I have an older edition as a hard copy, so I hope I'll find it here. Yes, this one I'm looking for. Yeah, this gives a little clearer picture. Gases here, liquids here, pure metals here, in between alloys and non-metallic solids, and insulation system, foams and fibers. So this is the range of thermal conductivity for different material. Nothing unexpected here. So I guess you expect these things. Just gives you a quantitative idea that how many orders are different. So if you see gases versus metals, they are basically This is if I take it 100, so metals you can take it as 100, liquids as 1, gases as 0.1. So 2 orders less here, 1 order less here. So you see that gas and liquid, there are not so much difference, but the liquid and metals, so there are 2 orders of difference. And all those things we are discussing are here. So this plot shows the temperature dependence of thermal conductivity of selected solids. You see that mostly up to a certain temperature, 1000, mostly metals, their thermal conductivity decreases. Metals and oxides. So these are aluminum oxide decreases much more stronger. Iron also decreases stronger. Tungsten, but silver, copper, there is a moderate decrease till 1000 degree. On the other hand, you can see that. Where is that? Here the gases. Thermal conductivity of gases increases as a function of temperature, even liquid. That's because of their dependence on mean free path. And they are mostly insensitive. Liquid and solids are, of course, not dependent on pressure. Even gases' thermal conductivity is not dependent on pressure. That is because certain effects nullify each other. So you need to read this portion from your textbook, and you will learn a lot more about the thermal conductivity and the basics of heat transfer. Okay, so any question? So now we'll enter into conduction analysis. Conduction is a very highly mathematical subject, so we have to do some maths. Yeah.
Sir,
Mm-hmm.
sir, how is convection possible in turbulent flow?
Turbulent flow, normally conduction will happen only in the very thin layer near the surface where you have no slip. All other places you will have convection, very strong convection, because of the fluctuating velocity of turbulent flow.
So by fluctuating, you mean with time?
See, turbulent flow has a mean velocity superimposed with a fluctuating velocity in all x, y, z direction, which is also a function of time.
So because the profile for a turbulent flow, it becomes like the velocity along the Vx component becomes constant along the radial direction.
See, this turbulent flow, if you see microscopically, the same pipe flow when it's turbulent, you will see a blunt velocity profile, of course, right? Like this.
Yes.
Now, if you look microscopically, if you see the velocity, so x all, say suppose it has bulk x velocity. On an average, fluid is moving in x direction, okay? But it will also have a small fluctuating velocity this and this direction, and also a small fluctuating velocity on an or over and above this x velocity. So if average velocity is u bar plus x prime, then you have y prime and z prime, and these are all function of time. So this is how the velocity field for a turbulent flow.
Okay.
And this y and z, if you look at in rectangular coordinate or in cylindrical coordinate, it will be R, Z or Z and theta. So theta and R velocities will be there even in turbulent flow.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So UZ bar plus Z prime function T, UR, that is prime because there is no average R velocity. That's function of T. And so this is the velocity field for turbulent flow. This R and theta, this especially R is responsible for bringing heat by convection from wall to the bulk. But near the wall, the velocity is less, flow is laminar. So again, the conductive heat transfer occurs in the conduction heat transfer must occur at the wall or near the wall, even for the turbulent flow.
Yes, sir.
Any other question?
Sir, in the previous chart you have shown, I saw that there is a diamond which has a really good thermal conductivity. Like, how can we explain it?
See, that depends on the lattice structure of diamond. So exactly why diamond has higher thermal conductivity than silver, I do not have a very clear scientific quantitative answer at this moment. But overall, I understand it as that this thermal conductivity is the propagation of a vibration through the lattice. So how efficiently the vibration can propagate through a lattice, that depends on the structure of the lattice. And diamond is, of course, something special about the structure. That's why the wave propagates much more efficiently inside diamond. And unlike metal, diamond will not have free electrons. So that's why certain oxides which doesn't have free electrons, they have so efficient transfer through the lattice, even they overtake or they do much better than the metals which has free electrons. Okay. All right. Now let us move on to the law that tells us about the conductive heat transfer. The basic law that this is Fourier's law of heat conduction. So this says that heat flux is a vector equals to negative of k times gradient of temperature. Okay. So this is Fourier's law. And this law governs most of our heat transfer needs. So all heat transfer, conductive heat transfer, and as you've seen that even this is important for convective heat transfer, because convective heat transfer is not without conduction certain places. So this is Fourier's law. I guess you are familiar with Fourier's law, right? Anyone? Are you familiar with Fourier's law?
Sir, not with the vector version of it. Like
okay.
we did.
All right. So you are familiar with scalar version of Fourier's law.
Yes, sir.
But here we write it as a vector because a lot of things are will come later where this vector representation is needed. See, heat flux, and you are familiar with momentum flux. You are in general familiar with flux. Flux means something that is passing in certain direction through certain plane per unit area per unit time. So this is something is moving in a direction. So the flux has direction. So heat flux, in which way heat is flowing. Okay. And So that's why the Q is a vector. And temperature is of course a scalar. So gradient of temperature is a vector. So left hand side we have a vector, right hand side we have a vector. And writing in the grad form, that is Fourier's law, if we write in the grad form, gradient of temperature, instead of writing is dt dx one dimension, I said this law is now you can write in any coordinate system. And I think you are familiar with the gradient operator in all coordinate systems. If you forget, you can always pull the gradient operator in cylindrical, gradient operator in spherical system, and then you write temperature, you know the heat flux in that particular coordinate system. So you don't have to learn separate Fourier's law for separate coordinate systems. So whichever coordinate system you need, you can use it in that coordinate system. So all you have to replace the gradient operator in this coordinate system. And also you see that this K the analysis that we'll do now or next few classes, we'll assume K to be constant. But you already just couple of minutes ago I have shown you a plot where K is not constant. K is a function of temperature. But normally we deal with a temperature range of 20, 30, 50 degrees centigrade, and the variation of K is not much. And more important is that if you keep variation of K with temperature, the analysis becomes very much complex and not suitable for engineering applications. So we will keep the thermal conductivity as constant. So that is our restriction.
Sir,
And tell me.
K is a scalar and delta T is also a scalar. Then, like, how can the product of two scalars be a vector?
No, delta. It's not delta T. It's gradient of T.
Okay, gradient. Yes.
Gradient. What is the gradient operator in Cartesian coordinate?
Dou by dou x I cap plus dou by dou z.
Yes. So this is a vector, right?
Yes, yes, sir.
Yeah. So that's why gradient of T becomes a vector and Q becomes a vector. Actually, K can also be taken as a tensor. Then it becomes a tensor product. It's a second order vector. It has to be dot with gradient of T. Then you get a vector. But we'll not go into those complications. Probably we'll see those in your transport phenomena class later in fourth year, I guess. Okay, now we'll restrict ourselves to steady one-dimensional conduction. Steady one-dimensional conduction. And for steady one-dimensional conduction, what is the, how can we write a Fourier's law for one-dimensional conduction?
Dou T by dou x into K. Negative.
Okay. But it will not be partial differential. It will
direct dt by dx. Yes, sir. dt by d.
So Q equals to minus K times dt dx. This negative sign implies that if dt dx is positive, heat flux in the negative x direction. So that means if temperature versus X, if it goes like this, dt dx is positive, that means Q must be in this direction, negative x direction. Okay. So that is the significance of the negative sign here. Now, let us start by solving a problem. I just made your tutorials ready, so but I couldn't mail it to you. I will do it by before Friday, so that as the problems come, you will have the problems in front of you. So right now, let me. Okay. So the problem, let me write it here. Problem 1. Consider the top horizontal glass cover of an ice cream refrigerator. Okay. The inside surface of the glass is at 20 degree Fahrenheit. And outside is at 60 degree Fahrenheit. Okay. The glass is 1/8 inch thick. Glass is 1/8 inch thick. Thermal conductivity is 0.41 BTU per hour feet degree Fahrenheit. What is the value of Q? All right. So it's very easy problem, right? All you have to do is to put those values. Okay. So first tell me what is heat flux, and then I will tell you something. Now this problem, there is no trick in this problem. This is the simplest problem. What is the heat flux in BTU per hour feet square?
16.4.
Huh?
16.4.
Minus
Okay,
60.
just type the number in the chat box. Okay. So Q equals to minus K. K is 0.41. This is BTU per hour feet square degree Fahrenheit. Hour feet degree Fahrenheit. And then we have temperature is 20 at x equals to 0 and 60 at x equals to 1/8. So 0 minus 1/8. This is 1/8 inch, right? We have to make it into feet. So how much it's coming? Have you considered this 1/12? Yeah. So what if you take 1/12? It will not come 16, right?
Yes, sir.
So how much it will come? Let me see if I get some more values in the chat box. Now it's coming. Yeah, 1574. All right. So you see that this is even the simplest problem sometimes give you trouble. Okay, so this is the heat flux. So the sign should come accordingly. If you take okay, it's a positive X direction. If you take the lower plane as origin and upper plane as it's away from the origin, then the heat flux in the heat flux in the negative direction, right? Okay. So what was the coordinate system we have taken? So we have taken. So this is 0. This is the glass. This is 1/8 inch. And here temperature is 20. Here temperature is 60. So this is so 0, 20, yes. So here we get minus. Here another minus was here. So that's why I have minus. So I have heat flux in this direction. All right. So this is the direction of negative X direction. So this was X or Z direction. Minus 1574 BTU per hour feet square. All right. Okay. So now this is a simple problem, but you see that still something can go wrong. And as we move along, there will be much more complicated problems. So are you familiar with this problem solving methodologies? Can you see the title of the book? Can anyone read what is that?
How to solve it.
Yeah, how to solve it. So this was written by a mathematician. What's the name?
Yeah.
Polya.
Josh Polya.
So have you ever seen this book before?
No, sir.
Okay. So this is very important for engineering problem solving. So engineering problem solving, there are 5-step methodology which we should follow for solving each and every problem. No matter how simple the problem is or how complex the problem is. So if you follow these steps, all problems will be able to solve systematically. Okay. So you see that even this simple problem sometimes lead to a wrong answer. So we have to be very careful. So first step for any problem solving is to understand the problem. Okay. And second step is the second step is not make a plan. Oops. I'm not able to escape from full screen. Anyways, fine. So second step is not make a plan. Second step is to draw a schematic. Draw a schematic. Mark all known and unknowns. Okay, mark all known and unknowns on that schematic, preferably with different color. And then third step is make a plan. That these things are given, these things are being asked, these are the relations I know, So this is how I'm going to obtain the unknowns. Fourth step is to execute your plan. Fifth step, most important. Anyone has any guess? What can be the fifth step? After you execute your plan, you get your answer. So what could be the fifth step?
Validate your answer. Check the problem again.
Yeah, so something similar. Polya said is look back. Is your answer making any sense? Is some unphysical or something strange coming as answer? Most of the time, people what they do, they especially in exam, once the problem is solved, answer has come out, immediately the urge is to leave the exam hall or at least go to the next problem. You have to resist that urge, look at the answer, revisit your steps and see everything is correct. Once you are satisfied and complete the fifth step, then you should leave the problem as solved. Okay. So first step, let me repeat again. First step is to understand the problem. Understand the problem clearly, what is being asked. Then this first and second step should go together. Draw a schematic, mark all knowns and unknowns, use different colors, make a very clear schematic. And then with the schematic and your understanding, make a plan. So these things are given, these relations are available. So this is how I am going to obtain the output. So if I look at the previous problem, I should draw this schematic. So this is not a good schematic, so I should show you a better schematic. So maybe yeah, we don't have much time. So next class we'll start with writing a good schematic for our next problem or even for this problem. So make a plan. So plan is that, see, temperatures are given, thermal conductivity is given, delta X is given, so dt dx is given, and now we have to get the heat flux by using one-dimensional Fourier's law. And we have to also list all assumptions. So what we'll do in the next class, we'll again revisit this problem with a little bit more clarity of certain things. All right, enough for today. So any question, please feel free to ask. If you don't have any question, feel free to leave.
Excuse me, sir. If we consider the case for laminar flow through a hot pipe, what would the steady state condition look like?
Laminar flow through a hot pipe.
Yes, through a hot pipe and yes, conduction steady state situation.
Steady state situation, laminar flow, right?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Steady state situation where?
If the heat is transferring from top to bottom towards the center, towards the center, so in the steady state, what will happen? Like, will all the fluid reach the same temperature as the pipe, or would there be a gradient of temperature?
The internal force convection lectures are needed. This is not a straightforward answer to that, because the steady state in such kind of internal force convection is in terms of non-dimensional temperature. So it's not a straightforward answer is available, and it will be clear only after you study the internal force convection. Steady state, actually, steady state temperature is slightly tricky for heat transfer. So are you
no, sir. Just if the temperature situation in the pipe, like how will it vary through the with varying radial distances?
Oh, radial distances, it's that immediately in the vicinity of wall, the fluid will be at wall temperature. Then it will towards the center, it will be lesser. So there will be a profile of temperature. Like you have profile of velocity, you will have a profile of temperature. So if I can, I will have a. So this wall temperature is T surface. So the fluid temperature here also T surface. So this is T surface. This is T surface. And as you go towards the center, temperature will decrease. And then again it will go towards T surface. So it will have this kind of temperature profile. If wall temperature is less, opposite will occur.
Sir, in this situation, if so the heat is coming in towards the center, it's coming in from all sides. So how can the center be at a constant temperature? If heat is coming in from all sides, it has to.
The center will never. So if you go along the pipe, so in certain distance of pipe, this profile will look more flatter. It is not a vector, so if you go some more, you will have completely flat profile and heat transfer will stop. So this is in contrast with the velocity profile. Velocity profile reaches a steady value, but temperature profile doesn't reach a steady value. But the non-dimensional temperature reaches a steady value. That you have to wait for some more time to learn that feature. You can read it in So non-dimensional temperature reaches a steady value. Go ahead, asking something.